Hi, this is Dr. Shweta, and in this video I'm going to discuss with you the second division of the neoclassical period, and that is the Augustan Age or the Augustan period. And we will discuss the important poets and the literature that was produced during this time period. So let's begin. The Augustan Age is also known as the Age of Queen Anne, or more popularly as the Age of Pope, as Alexander Pope is the most popular poet of this age. During this time period, poetry became more mannered, more satirical, and more political. The poets of this time adapted the styles of the classical writers like Virgil and Horace. The major literary forms were being written during this time period, and they were odes, ballads, elegies, lyric, and also mock epic and satirical poetry by writers like Pope and Dryden. Dryden lived a very longer life and continued writing through this period as well. To better understand this age, we must divide this age into different genres like the poetry of Augustan Age, the prose during Augustan Age, and the drama of the Augustan Age. Criticism was also another genre that was being written during this period, which was through essays and through satires. So let's first discuss the major poets of the Augustan time period. The first name that comes up is of Alexander Pope. Second is of Jonathan Swift, third John Gay, fourth Thomas Gray, fifth James Thomson. Let us start with the Augustan poetry, and to begin with, the first and the foremost important poet from this time period is Alexander Pope. Alexander Pope is also known for writing mock heroic poems like The Rape of the Lock, which is a satirical piece on the trivialities of the upper class during his time. The poem is divided into 5 cantos and it is in heroic couplet like, what dire offense from amorous causes spring, what mighty contests rise from trivial things. So you see, there is a kind of couplet that was being written by Alexander Pope during this time. The poem describes a day in the life of a lady named Belinda, who is grief-stricken, or we can say is mournful after a baron who cuts one of the locks of her hair with the help of scissors. This entire episode is humorously described by Pope in an epic style. Therefore, it is called as mock epic style. The poem is also a satire on the trivialities of the upper noble class and their indifference towards real things that actually mattered. Other important poems by Alexander Pope, the Dunciad. Dunciad is a satirical poem on the untalented poets who write anything for money. The theme of this poem is stupidity conquers all. It is many times asked in the exam. The third important piece written by Alexander Pope is Epistle to Dr. Arbuthnot, written in 1734, which is a satire in poetic form, written in heroic couplet and addressed to Pope's dying friend Dr. John Arbuthnot, who was a physician. It is called Pope's most direct autobiographical work, wherein he attacks many of his contemporaries on their literary merit and also praises some other writers as well. The poem included character sketches of Atticus, who was representing Addison indirectly, and Sporus, which meant John Hervey. Both these were Pope's rivals and contemporaries. The epistle is an apology in which Pope defends his works against the attacks of his detractors, particularly the writers like Lady Mary Wortley Montagu, Joseph Addison, and Lord Hervey. Next important work by Pope is the Odes, which were written during 1707 to 1743, which is again a collection of many odes. Then it was the translation of the Iliad and the Odyssey, which was also done by Pope himself. So we see that Pope was a really accomplished writer who did many things during his lifetime. The next important poet is Jonathan Swift. Jonathan Swift was a prominent Anglo-Irish poet, a satirist, and a writer. Some of his very important poems are, the first is The Battle of the Books, written in 1704, which is a satirical poem about the debate between ancient and modern learning. So it is a kind of a satire or a debate which talks about which learning is better, the ancient or the modern learning. Next, he wrote The Progress of Beauty in 1714, which is a poem exploring the fleeting nature of beauty, which means that beauty is not permanent, it will not stay forever. So that was the poetry during the Augustan period. Now coming to the Augustan prose. what was being written in essays, in novels and other prose writings during this time period. So let's see. The prose writing was also quite significant in this time period, and since the Restoration period, the number of prose writers increased significantly during this time period. The prose writings were mainly being done in the form of essays, satires and periodicals or magazines. Let us see some of the major prose writers of this period. Augustan Age saw an increase in the periodicals or magazines, and Addison and Steele are the two most important writers who always come to mind when we talk about the periodicals of the Augustan Age. Addison published the Tatler along with his friend Richard Steele jointly in 1709. So they together brought out the Tatler, which was a periodical magazine. The Tatler appeared 3 times a week, and Steele edited this particular periodical under the pseudonym Isaac Bickerstaff. After the Tatler was closed down in 1711, they both founded another periodical, the Spectator, in 1711, and later another periodical journal named The Guardian in 1713. So they were continuously working to bring out more and more magazines and publishing good writings into them. The next important prose writer is Jonathan Swift again. Swift, besides using satire through his poetry, was also accomplished in using satire through his prose writings. The major prose satirical work by Swift is A Tale of Tub, written in 1704, where he criticizes Roman Catholic Church. Another one is The Modest Proposal, written in 1729, which is a satirical pamphlet or an essay in which Swift criticizes England's legal and economic exploitation of Ireland, because Ireland was under England's jurisdiction. Third important prose writer is Alexander Pope. He wrote an essay on criticism in 1711 and an essay on man in 1733 to 34, which was written in heroic couplets comprising 4 epistles. Then we have a female satirist, Lady Mary Wortley Montagu, besides Ephra Behn. Lady Wortley is also another well-known female writer who wrote letters describing her travels through the Ottoman Empire. An important development during this time was the emergence of the Scribblers' Club, which was an informal association or a casual association of authors based in London that came together in the early 18th century. The nucleus of this club included the satirists like Jonathan Swift and Alexander Pope. Other members of this club were John Gay, John Arbuthnot, and Thomas Parnell. The group was founded in 1714 and lasted until the death of the founders, finally ending it in 1745. Pope and Swift are the 2 members whose reputations and works have the most long-lasting influence over the Scribblers' Club. Now we are coming to the Augustan drama. The major dramatists beside the Restoration comedy writers who were still continuing to produce popular comic plays, the major dramatists were first Colley Gibber. Colley Gibber, who is famous for writing the comedy plays like Love's Last Shift in 1696, and he also wrote The Careless Husband in 1704. Next we have Richard Steele. Besides writing periodicals, he was also writing plays, and one of his plays is The Conscious Lovers in 1722. Then we have Joseph Addison. Addison was also into writing plays, and he wrote one tragic play called Cato in 1713, and later he also wrote a comedy called The Drummer in 1716. Then we have John Gay. John Gay is popularly known to have written a prose opera or a musical play called The Beggar's Opera with a very famous character Peachum, who is a swindler or a cheater in the play. Now coming to the Augustan novels, there are quite a few novelists that started writing during the Augustan period. The first name is of Daniel Defoe. Daniel Defoe is credited to have written Robinson Crusoe, which is an English adventure novel first published on 25th April 1719. It was written with a combination of epistolary and confessional form. The book follows the title character Robinson after he is cast away or is lost and spends 28 years on a remote island near the coasts, encountering cannibals before being rescued. The story has been thought to be based on a real-life character of Alexander Selkirk, a Scottish castaway who lived for 4 years on a Pacific island after his ship was wrecked and he lost his way. Then we come to next novelist Jonathan Swift. Swift is popularly known for writing his travel narratives. For example, Gulliver's Travels in 1726. It is the first person narrative that is told from the point of view of Lemuel Gulliver, a surgeon, central character, and the sea captain who visits remote regions of the world, and it describes his adventures into 4 books, each book talking about his experiences in different parts of the world and in very strange kind of nations. The names of the 4 parts which Gulliver writes about are equally strange in their names. Part 1 is named A Voyage to Lilliput. The second part is named A Voyage to Brobdingnan. Third part is called as A Voyage to Laputa, Balnibabri, Lubnag, Gludrib and Japan, and part 4th is called as A Voyage to the Land of the Houyhnhnms. All these writers along with Ephra Behn led the way to the later novelists of the late 18th century, popularly called as the sentimental novelists, which we will cover in another section separately in the next age. So that was all about the Augustan period or the age of Pope. I have covered the important poets, the prose writers and the dramatists of this age. We will now skip to the next video, which is about the age of Johnson, and this is going to be the third and the last part of the neoclassical period.